And now, broadcasting from deep behind enemy lines in the occupied territory of the Socialist Republic of California, your host, former California State Assemblyman and Governor candidate, Tim Donnelly.
Hey, welcome to another edition of the Radio Free California Network. It has been quite the weekend. I think the war on Trump has only intensified. And by the way, just in case you're wondering, there's a reason that we're pretty much covering Donald Trump 24/7 on our show. And it's largely because nobody else is doing or saying anything of any note. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but Scott Walker, governor of Wisconsin, and we're huge fans of the Green Bay Packers home state. We have many friends in Wisconsin, but the guy jumps in the race. He walks across the street. They got a photo. It looks like a Beatles photo. He's walking across the street in the crosswalk without a tie or a jacket. And that's supposed to be like, hey, I'm the common man. Well, look, all due respect, first of all, you're wearing slacks. If you want to be the common man, you need to be wearing some blue jeans and maybe a cool shirt instead of a boring shirt that looks like you just took your tie and suit off. But that's just me. The problem is, as controversial as Scott Walker is to the unions, what's that guy, Trumpka? Oh, I got to find his name. The head of the AFL-CIO. You know, the one that used to be Jimmy Hoffa till they killed him and buried him in the freeway off-ramp in Detroit. Yeah, that was like legend when I was growing up in the Detroit area.
Yeah, when was that? What year?
It was like long before you were born.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, it was in the 80s. I know that's just like a concept on TV for some of you people who have not yet attained the proper age of adulthood, which is not 18, it's 30, by the way.
Oh, then I'm officially not an adult yet. That's
yeah, you
awesome.
are not. I have a son who just turned 18, and it was so funny because he was like, well, Dad, you should do this because you're an adult. And I almost turned around and said it to him, but I didn't want to ruin his day. He's only 18. He doesn't yet realize that he's an adult. But what is his name? It's Trumpka, Richard. I think it's Richard Trumpka, who took over for. There it is.
You were right, Richard Trumpka.
Yeah. He. Okay. So here's his comment. Scott Walker is a national disgrace. Okay. Let's just break this down. Scott Walker doesn't believe that the public sector unions, and in his case, it was largely the teachers union and some others, should control the entire treasury of the state of Wisconsin. That's it. When you look at, do you remember the rallies that shook the Wisconsin state capitol? They took over the capitol. They held signs. They had their fists in the air, and they were saying that they were comparing Scott Walker to Hitler. They were comparing him to Stalin. They were comparing him to other dictators and saying that this is the end. It's over, and we're putting our fist in the air. Socialist power. This is the socialist power labor movement. And then when you looked at the simple facts, they were asking teachers to pay an additional 10% of their medical coverage. And they were asking teachers to contribute 8% more to their retirement package. Instead of it being 100% paid by the taxpayers, the teachers were going to have to pay some measly 8% and have a retirement for life, have basic medical benefits for life, which most Wisconsin's working taxpayers don't have. That was it. That's what they went to war over. That's the national disgrace of Scott Walker. But you know what Scott Walker did? He actually beat back the teachers union. They put all of their money, they steal money, the unions, all the public sector unions, steal money from every one of their members, whether they like it or not, and use it for their own political purposes. And in the end, they tried to they spent a lot of money. They brought people in from all over the world. They had George Soros money there. They had out-of-state money. They had oodles and truckloads of cash. And they tried to recall Governor Walker. I think they spent like $300 or $400 million in this effort. And guess what happened? Scott Walker won. He beat back the incredible coercion and force of the unions simply because he stood his ground for the people, and the people voted for him. So he does bring something into this race, but what's alarming and shocking is it's hard to notice the guy with Trump who has out-Trumped him. Because Trump is talking about issues that are even more conservative and even more, what's the right word? Well, it's groundbreaking to have a presidential candidate in today's political climate talking about illegal immigration the way that he is. And we will get into a little bit more of that later on in the show. But I just want to share with you a couple of the headlines going on around California. This one it just blew me away. Uber drivers nabbed in LAPD sting. So get this, because you're a former Uber driver. They actually, this is a real story. It was on CBS Los Angeles. There was the police had decoys out on the streets who were trying to flag down a cab looking for what they call bandit cabs, right? So they saw people that had the U on the car for Uber, and they waved at them frantically and tried to get them to pull over. So two drivers pulled over, and guy said, a lady vigorously waved me down, a man named Freeman. I almost thought maybe she needed help or something. She said, Uber. And he said, yeah, I'm Uber. And then she opened the back door, got in. She said, I really need to go to this place. I really need to go. Hurry up, please. I need a ride. And he's like, okay, we'll hop in. And then she said, but I have a friend across the street. Could you let me wave her over? And as soon as that happened, the cops descended on the car. Now, what's the crime? The crime is operating a cab without a license and, a whole bunch of legal things. So they arrested the three drivers, impounded their vehicles. Now, I just want to give you a little perspective here. They no longer, in the city of Los Angeles, arrest street vendors who illegally operate taco carts, ice cream stands, coffee stands, whatever, without a permit. These little gypsies that move around. Many of them are here illegally, but it became a political issue. So they stopped for illegal aliens who get caught at any checkpoint, whether it's a DUI checkpoint or any checkpoint. They no longer have their cars impounded because it became political, because the political power of those who are in our country illegally outweighs the political power of those who abide the law. But here, they have decided it's okay to go after Uber. It's okay to put down the Uber revolution. That's a major threat to the citizens of Los Angeles. Last time I checked, and I maybe I'm just crazy and I'm making this all up. Have you heard of like the illegal Uber drivers that are out killing people? Like the 32-year-old woman up in Catherine Steinel up in San Francisco? Or is that just the illegal aliens? Last time I checked, Uber drivers were not committing murder and getting away with it. They didn't create a sanctuary. There's no sanctuary for Uber drivers. They don't get to break the laws with impunity the way people in the country illegally do. And it's all because the hypocrisy is that Uber drivers are just people trying to make a living, and they can't be counted on to all vote the same way. Whereas if you hand over free stuff to people who come in illegally, there's a pretty good chance they'll vote for you. 323-746-TALK if you've got an opinion about this. We're going to have a great clip coming up, too, from that Baltimore mayor, Stephanie Rawlings, right after this break.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded. But it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. Welcome back to the Radio Free California Network. We stream live at timdonnellyshow.com, and another strange happening over the weekend. Mexico kingpin El Chapo Guzman stages brazen jailbreak. He busts out of jail through a tunnel. Surprise, surprise. He is one of Mexico's most notorious drug lords, and he's gone. All they've got is a hole in the ground underneath a bunch of dirt, and it wasn't very wide. It looks like 50 centimeters in the showers in the area where they showered, but they built a heck of a tunnel underneath there and got him out. And so now he is on the lam and on the loose. But here's the part I don't get. You got a kingpin, a guy that has probably killed thousands of people or ordered the murder of thousands of people. And he takes the time to threaten Donald Trump via Twitter. Tells Donald Trump he's going to come and shut his mouth for him. So I bet that the Trumpmeister, the Trumpinator, has probably added a little bit to his security detail, although he is definitely not someone who is easily rattled. Believe me, I did have the opportunity over the weekend to meet him, and very impressive. There's something about him that I think if people see this other side of him, it will solidify their support as opposed to diminish it. Certainly, when he hosted the press conference for 5 families who have become the poster children or the face of the victims of illegal aliens in California in particular. And that includes, of course, people we've had on this show: Jamil Shaw, Don Rosenberg, Sabina Durden, who we're going to have on later on in the 5 o'clock hour, and others, Brenda Sparks, Robin Vidston, who you might not know as well, but he elevated them and their plight to a national level. And for those of us who have been in the trenches, who have been fighting for justice for these families, who have been demanding accountability, who have been fighting against law after law after law that has been passed to create more and more incentives for people to come into our country illegally, which doesn't make any sense. But that's what they do in California. That's just the simple reality. Donald Trump did something that no other presidential candidate has done, period, since ever. And he is taking that bully pulpit and he's using it for good. And, of course, he is being roundly demonized, undermined, attacked. One liberal commentator called him compared him to Sarah Palin and said that he was rotten scum and a whole bunch of other things. And it's funny because they get away with it. They can say whatever they want. And that brings us back to our good friend in Baltimore, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings. I forget the rest of her name, but what's the ending?
Isn't it Blake?
Yes, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, who has decided to fire. We're only going to hear a couple minutes of it, but she's decided to fire the police commissioner and blame him for what she did.
Moments ago, I thanked Police Commissioner Anthony Batts for his service to Baltimore City. And I informed him that I would be making a change in the leadership of the Baltimore City Police Department. Recent events have placed an intense focus on our police leadership, distracting many from what needs to be our main focus, the fight against crime. So we need a change. This was not an easy decision, but it is one that is in the best interest of the people of Baltimore. The people of Baltimore deserve better. The brave men and women of our department who put their lives on the line every day to make our city safer deserve better, and we're going to get better. Today, I am naming Deputy Commissioner Kevin Davis as interim commissioner.
My focuses for the future are really pretty simple. It's all about the crime fight, and it's all about the relationship with our community. And the relationship with our community needs to be one of service.
Fox DC's Lauren DeMarco is live in Baltimore. Lauren. All right, well, Greta, you said it. The murder rate in Baltimore has been skyrocketing. 41 homicides in the month of May alone, making it the deadliest month in decades. And the mayor says that is the reason that she has fired the police commissioner, Anthony Batts. In fact, Batts himself apologized to the police force back in May, admitting that he did put the officers in harm's way. Now, we're standing at the intersection of Pennsylvania and North Avenue. As you can see behind me, the CVS still boarded up. It was burned in the looting and remains closed, as do hundreds of businesses. This neighborhood here really the hardest hit. Today, the police union, the Fraternal Order of Police in Baltimore, released a 32-page review stating that the riots, arson, and looting following the death of Freddie Gray in April were preventable, that the city's leadership hindered the response. The review said officers claimed they lacked basic riot equipment, training, and direction from leaders during all of that disorder. It says that they were ordered not to engage the protesters, instead to hold the line, and about 160 officers were hurt in the rioting following Freddie Gray's funeral. The mayor's office today issued a response to that union review, calling it a trumped-up political document full of baseless accusations, finger-pointing, and personal attacks. But then, hours later, she held this news conference saying that she was replacing the police commissioner Anthony Batts. Now, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake said that the union's review did not play a role in her decision. She says it's because of the urgent need to stop this surge in violence that the city has been seeing following the riots. She did name...
I mean, that is a skilled politician that tells the cops to stand down. The town practically burns to the ground. Hundreds of people die, and she blames someone else. More of this when we get back. If you've been listening long to the Tim Donnelly Show, you know that we talk constantly about defending freedom and about defending our natural inalienable rights. The Firearms Policy Coalition is a partner of the Tim Donnelly Show. But more than that, they're on the front lines every day in Sacramento and all across the state, in the courts, defending your Second Amendment right. That is a natural right that the government merely acknowledged in the Second Amendment. If you value your freedom, then you need to join Firearms Policy Coalition. Become a member. I'm a member, and I'm happy to support an organization that is doing such an incredible job. Go to joinfpc.org. The Tim Donnelly Show sent you. Or go to timdonnellyshow.com and click on the FPC link to make it easy. But whatever you do, join today. FPC.org. Welcome back to the Tim Donnelly Show. And before the break, we were playing a clip from the now infamous mayor of Baltimore, Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, whose incompetence is really only matched by her sheer cluelessness. She has no political savvy whatsoever and doesn't seem to understand that when you command a city, when you're the chief executive officer of a city like Baltimore, the buck stops with you. But she's decided to blame the police commissioner for the order she gave, maybe because he obeyed her and told his officers to stand down. But it's she who should be resigning, not firing or demanding the resignation of the commissioner. But let's continue to roll the clip.
Stop this surge in violence that the city has been seeing following the riots. She did name Deputy Commissioner Kevin Davis as interim commissioner. Now, I've been talking with people here on the street, just asking them what they think about all of this. Some say they think that Anthony Batts is a scapegoat, that the mayor's trying to protect herself and that they're worried about the city's image. That's what most people here are saying. Although I did speak with a few, one woman in particular, who said, you know, we need something to change here. The violence continues to escalate. So whatever the reasoning behind it, maybe this will make a difference. They're just hoping that things here in Baltimore improve. Greta?
Lauren, thank you. And just hours before the police commissioner was fired, tension in the Baltimore Police Department totally boiling over. The Fraternal Order of Police releasing that scathing new report, blasting the department for a lack of leadership. And Gene Ryan is president of Baltimore's FOP. He joins us on the phone. Good evening, Lieutenant.
How are you, Greta?
I'm very well. Well, the mayor says that your report is just trumped up, baseless personal attacks, but then she goes off and fires the police chief. What do you think?
Well, what I think is we have honest and we have officers that were there and their testimony, and I think ours is factual information. So I'm not going to criticize the mayor. I think somewhere moving forward, since she did appoint a new interim commissioner, that we need to somewhere along the lines work together. And I'm actually pretty happy that she did appoint him as the interim commissioner, because we do have a lot of qualified personnel inside our department, but he has a lot of experience that he's bringing to the table, and I think he's one of the best choices at this point in time.
Well, the order that's sort of the subject of a lot of controversy is that the police were told not to engage protesters but hold the line. What does that mean, and who's the one who issued that?
Well, our investigation is revealing that it's coming from the top, and, he is the top cop, and that was the commissioner.
So it didn't come from the mayor? So that didn't come from the mayor?
Not as far as I know. No, it didn't.
Okay. And what does it mean?
As far as her one statement that she made into the press, which is on the front page, give them the space, to destroy and do what they want. If that's not a stand down order, I don't know what is.
What does not to engage protesters but hold the line mean? Does that mean don't arrest anybody but just stand there?
Yes. And in a lot of instances, in certain areas, they were getting pelted by cinder blocks. And when they broke into certain auto parts stores, they were getting whatever they stole out of the stores. They were getting thrown. That was getting thrown at them. And when they advanced, they moved back. They regrouped, and the protesters, or I'm sorry, they're called rioters as far as I'm concerned. They were picking up their ammunition, and then they were they did it again, and they threw it back at the officers, and they had to stand there and take it.
Well, when I heard that, I've been sort of struggling with that. I've heard that before, not to engage the protesters, rioters, but hold the line. In that instance, what's the point of the police officers even being there? Just to be able to have a target for someone to throw something at if you can't do anything?
Right. And the police officers are never supposed to be sitting ducks. What should have happened, if holding the line is one thing, and for safety reasons, but if you're sitting there and you're getting pummeled by the bricks and rocks and whatever else they're throwing at them, you either have to retreat or you have to advance. There's only two decisions there. You have to move in, you take over, you make arrests, and you end the problem right then and there. Or you retreat, and they keep coming at you. Then sooner or later you have to do something. What should have been done, they should have moved in, taken control of the situation, and ended the whole thing to begin with.
Well,
because I was asked today, if we were to control Saturday, would Monday ever happen? I say absolutely not. We didn't handle Saturday, the 25th of April, the way it should have been handled.
I guess what's sort of troubling here is the whole idea is that the cops were the sitting ducks, told not to do anything, which I think is just huge. Obviously it was a problem. Over 130 cops were injured. That seems foolish. What I don't understand fully is where the order came from. And then the mayor says today that the reason she fired the top cop was not because of anything, but because of 41 homicides in the month of May. But the problem is the 41 homicides in the month of May, the police don't prevent homicides. They're there to make the arrests and the investigations later. So she's firing them not for the riots, but for the homicides in May.
Well, that was her reasoning. I'll leave that up to the mayor. Me personally, it should have been a combination of things. And I don't know if you got a copy of our after action review. There was a lot of things that weren't done. I didn't call for him to stand down or vote of no confidence. What I called for was improvement. So what happened back in April and the beginning of May should never happen again, because the citizens of Baltimore should never have to put up with what we put up with back then. There were so much millions of dollars of property damage. Citizens were injured. Police officers were injured. That should never happen again. And nothing has been done to move forward to prevent that from happening again.
Lieutenant, thank you very much for joining us, and I hope now that things will be better for the rank and file in the police department and also for the people in the community. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
And on the record,
it's just shocking. All the way around. Greta said it perfectly, but I'm trying to figure out where we are in this country when you literally burn the city to the ground over the death of one individual. And then when dozens upon dozens upon dozens are killed because of your political reaction, your politically correct action, ordering the police officers to stop policing, telling them to become basically political figures. When you politicize the police, you get chaos, you get crime, you get murder. And people are dying. More people are dying in Baltimore and cities like it where this has become the norm, where police are no longer allowed, quote unquote, because of the threat of lawsuits, civil rights suits, or riots, or whatever else is going to happen. People are the cops are pulling back. They're saying, hey, we're only going to do what we can defend by the book. They're not doing the interactive policing. They're not going after the bad guys and trying to take them off the streets before they commit the crimes. And the bad guys know it. And there's a void. There's a vacuum. Just like there was when the troops pulled out. ISIS came in and filled that vacuum. It was very predictable. And we now have that on the streets of Baltimore, and I'm just, the only reason I bring it up here, even though we're largely focused on California issues, is we have seen that in San Francisco and Los Angeles mostly, when they politicized the policing and said, hey, if you're illegally present, well, we're going to give you a pass. We're going to look the other way. We know you just came here for a better life. And even though my job is to be a cop, I'm going to be a poet, a priest, or a politician. You pick. And we're not going to do our jobs anymore. And by the way, if people get killed who really should have had a right to stand in a public space, and they had a right to expect that they were safe. But not when they politicize the policing to the point that they tell that anybody who is crossing the border already knows, hey, if you can get to LA or San Francisco, you're safe. They will never take you off the streets. It is not a problem. You can do whatever you want. You're basically a protected class. Sanctuary cities, sanctuary state. Thank you very much, Kamala Harris. Thank you very much, Gavin Newsom, and almost every Democrat in the state who supported this. Now we have another family suffering. And by the way, we'll get to it when we get back from the break, but there's a story out of Michigan where a Mexican illegal alien raped a 13-year-old girl. You cannot believe what is now hitting the mainstream news wires thanks to Donald Trump. 323-746-TALK, 323-746-8255 if you got something to say. We'll be right back.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded, but it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
Hey, if you find yourself in my hometown of Twin Peaks, don't leave without stopping by the grill at the Antlers Inn. It's right in the heart of Twin Peaks. They serve dinner every night. They're right there at Highway 189 and Bear Springs Road. They have the best steaks, the best sushi, No matter what you have, make sure you call ahead for a reservation. 909-336-2600. 909-336-2600. And tell them Tim Donnelly sent you. Now that Donald Trump has elevated the status of the victims of illegal aliens to a national level, stories are coming out of the woodwork. Every day there's a new one, or there's 10 new ones. This one is really disheartening, and more than likely will make you very angry, but truth is truth. On Thursday, Michigan police arrested a Mexican illegal alien, 23-year-old Aurelio Hernandez Gomez, after finding him with a 13-year-old Florida girl who had last been seen 2 days earlier before her ordeal. Cops acting on a tip that led them to a Hartford home where Hernandez Gomez hid the girl while assaulting her. Michigan authorities charged Hernandez Gomez with one count of third-degree criminal sexual conduct, meaning they believe he either raped or otherwise incapacitated or otherwise rendered her helpless. They have not released further details, such as whether or not the victim was related to the alien suspect. He's being held on $150,000 bond in a jail in Florida. At the very, 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 very last line, Hernandez Gomez of the article, I'm just going to read it, hails from Chiapas, Mexico, where the sexual age of consent is 12. Think about that, 12. So I guess the point is that maybe he didn't think this was wrong. Well, if he didn't think it was wrong, why was he hiding her? And is this what we are going to have to accept? I'm trying to figure out what the implications are when you bring in millions and millions of people from countries where, and I can't speak for all these different regions, but there's one region where the sexual age of consent is way underage. I don't know, and I can't speak to the larger implications. I can only wonder. And I think we need to have a very important discussion at a national level of whether or not we want to undo the protections that we have in place for our children, not our adults, but just for our kids. I mean, it's bad enough with the Marxist progressives in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., trying to destroy the family unit. And I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. Well, you don't have kids, so it's not gonna affect you the same. But I was at a meeting talking about the SB 277 referendum this weekend, and one mother came up to me, who, by the way, used to be a Democrat, has now registered Republican. She's a public school teacher. Public school teachers pretty much are almost all Democrats by default because of their union. Their union brainwashes them to believe that, everybody else hates you. Scott Walker is Satan. And anybody who is against public sector unions raping the taxpayer is essentially, a Hitler or Stalin or whatever. But this public school teacher, I discovered, is against Common Core, former Democrat, and was insanely outraged, much more so than on almost any other issue, over the new guidelines for sexual education in California. And we will have somebody on later in the week to talk about that bill, because it is You guys may think that the culture war ended when they passed gay marriage at the Supreme Court level, and people were all up in arms about that for about 5 minutes. And no, it goes on every day. And the goal is to replace the parent. You're not needed anymore. We want to inject your kid with something that could possibly be toxic to your kid. Hey, you don't get a choice. Or the kid don't go to school. Too bad for you. They're trying to replace the parent, but they're also trying to replace God with government. That's the bottom line. And what countries do that? Communist countries do that. They make sure you have nothing to believe in. Remember, what did Obama run on? Hope and change, right? That's it. You've got to now look to the government for everything. Don't even bother thinking for yourself. We'll think for you. And if you have heretical thoughts, we will police them. We will punish you. We will figure out a way to get into your brain and shut down any rational thought. You will simply comply. Well, we won't comply, but we do have to go to a break. So we'll be right back at the top of the hour with some authors, young kids, wrote a book on why they became Republican. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
Who are you getting on? Are we getting two people on? Hey, welcome back. This is what a gorgeous summer afternoon. It's breezy, it's hot, it's summer. And it's just because it's summer doesn't mean we stop talking about the hot topics. And I heard about our next guest from some friends of mine in Orange County, and I have to admit that this The title of the book, I'm just going to give it to you, is Why Sophie Votes Republican. Or, I'm sorry, Sophie Votes Republican, not why. But it's a children's book. And as you know, I do a lot of criticizing of the Republican Party for failing to stand up and actually defend the beliefs on which the party was founded. And we talk honestly on this show about what has happened to the grand old party. It has been slowly dying. So the encouraging thing is that there are young people who are becoming deeply disenfranchised with the Democrat Party, which has sort of sucked up all the youth. And so I was intrigued and very interested in talking with our guests who have written a children's book, which I think is brilliant because they're targeting the future. None of the people reading this book are going to be voting anytime soon, but they're going to get them to begin thinking. And we're going to welcome to the show Mason Sayer and Laura Hall, who has written the book. Welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hi, thanks so much for having us on, Tim.
No, I was just on your website, by the way, which is SophieVotesRepublican.com. Very simple.
Yes.
Your book looks amazing in terms of the way that you present it. The illustrations are fantastic.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So you have somehow come along in your life. You say your grandparents passed on their values to you, and this passion came to you to reach out to the youth. Tell us about that.
Sure, yeah. Well, I grew up in Nebraska where conservative views dominate just as much as liberal views dominate here in California. And so, my whole upbringing, I was surrounded by, a conservative family and conservative thoughts. And then when I was 26 years old, I decided to go to law school, and I went to law school at Cal Berkeley, which you can imagine.
That's counterintuitive.
Yeah, I know. It's my mother told me, she said, you have my permission but not my blessing to go. And so I went, and I was just absolutely shocked at the views that I heard young people spouting there. And I felt that there was an extreme amount of hostility towards conservative viewpoints. And it was really there in Berkeley that I thought, geez, so many young kids today go off to college and they experience serious pressure to think and vote like a Democrat. And so it was really coming out of Berkeley that I felt this call to action to do something to help influence the youth and teach them about conservative principles.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, just speaking about Berkeley for a minute, of all the college campuses that I've been involved with, Berkeley has actually surprisingly been one of the easiest. I've been invited to speak on there 3 times.
Yeah, I can believe it. They actually, and I don't know if this is still true, but while I was there, the largest club on campus was the Berkeley Young Republicans. And so in the undergraduate community there were sort of the renegades of Berkeley, if you could believe it, were the conservatives. They were the ones who were really considered those far out people. But interestingly, in the law school, in the graduate schools there, and certainly in the law school, it was pretty tough being a conservative. There were so few, especially many of the professors were very liberal in their teachings.
Well, it's interesting. I was invited along with my colleague Shannon Grove, who is, both of us are arguably the most conservative Republicans in the state. In elected office, and we were invited to speak to the poli-sci class, and it was a huge auditorium. I think they had something like 800 students in the class. There were 796 liberals and 2 Republicans sitting together down front, huddled together.
Yeah.
But
for cover.
Actually, the group that I've met with, the college Republicans, a number of times too, and we have a lot of empathy for them. They're behind enemy lines, but they also tend to be among the most effective in reaching other students because the homogeny, if that's the right word, is leftist, and the man is leftist. And it's not just Democrat; it's Marxist progressive brand of Democrat politics. And you're not allowed to question it.
Right.
But you wrote
as you say, it's so counterintuitive. You know, people who just pride themselves on being liberal are just absolutely unwilling to consider anything but, right?
Yeah, and I don't even like to use the word liberal. I was mistaken in using it because liberal refers to people like JFK.
Right.
He was a classic liberal, and let's bring this to issues that are alive today. If you're a classic liberal, then you wouldn't force vaccinations on people for whom it might mean a death sentence. You wouldn't force everybody to do what the state says. You'd let them make their own choice and have some informed consent. You wouldn't force a gun control agenda on the law-abiding in order to deal with criminals when you're not dealing with criminals. You would live and let live and say, look, like that CNN, former CNN... why can't I find the word? The announcer, media reader, whatever they call him, anchor. Yeah. Lynn Russell, who was almost murdered in a motel room on Route 66, except for the fact that her husband carried. And she said, look, the Second Amendment is real simple. I carry, you don't have to. Now just shut up. And she put the F word in there somewhere. But I thought that was a great point. If you really are live and let live like a classic liberal, then you don't want to control every aspect of my life using the government as a tool.
Right.
But obviously, that isn't what we have. And there was a reason that you wrote this book, because the youth have sort of been, well, not sort of, they've been indoctrinated by the school system, and you're trying to do some indoctrinating of yourself.
Yes, yeah, I am. And I think, like you said, the school system, there's no doubt that, teachers, who are mostly union members lean left, and they absolutely do teach kids, their political viewpoints. And so if you have conservative parents and grandparents out there, it's just absolutely imperative that you teach kids. If you want to call it indoctrination, but you have to teach kids your views. Otherwise, you're basically feeding them to, whoever is out there, and chances are it's going to be, someone trying to impart liberal views.
Well, we're talking to Laura Hall, the author of Sophie Votes Republican. We've also got her marketing manager, Mason Sayer. Did I say your name right, Mason?
Yes, you did.
Excellent. You're on the phone, and you went to UCLA. And I'm not going to say anything about either football team. Try to maintain the largest and broadest possible audience.
That's right.
But so, what is your involvement here? And I'm going to give you about a minute to introduce yourself, and then we're going to take a break. And when we get back, I want you, both of you, or one of you, to introduce us to the characters in your book. But Mason, give us a little spiel on yourself.
Yes. Well, like you said, I went to UCLA, and, a very large California public university. So I had some similar experiences to Laura and her time at Berkeley. But I met Laura about a year ago, and what really prompted me to get on board with this project was my family. I have a younger sibling who is 9 years old, and another one who is 10 years old. And over the past few years, I've noticed them, coming home from school with a lot of very liberal ideas and values that they're just naturally inheriting from their teachers. A lot of their teachers are kind of just instilling these liberal values on them, and so much so that I think it was during the 2008 presidential election, my younger siblings came home and they said that they were going to vote for Obama because their teachers were going to vote for Obama.
Oh, my word.
And that's right. And so I started realizing that there's just a lot of pressure out there, especially in the public school system at any age. So I like this project because it gives kids from conservative and Republican families, gives them a solid foundation to go off into the world with. It brings Republican values back down to the core in an easy way for the kids to understand, and I think it was a great thing. Okay,
we are talking with Laura Hall, Mason Sayer, who are involved in a project. It's a children's book, and we're going to meet the characters right after these messages. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded. But it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Laura Hall and Mason Sayer, who are inspiring young people that have put out a book, children's book, to counter the indoctrination of the left in our schools. And it's called Sophie Votes Republican. There's a link to it, which is up at timdonnellyshow.com, and it takes you right. There's a link right at the top, because look, when somebody goes out and does this, they want you to buy their book. So I'm telling you, I think it's worth your time. I think it is something that could be an effective tool in countering the leftist propaganda that is so prominent now in all of our schools, K through 12, college, community college, you name it. They're getting brainwashed, and here we have an opportunity to brainwash them back to the simple truth and values that made this country great. So I'm going to bring Laura on for a moment. Laura, I want you to introduce us to the characters and kind of give us a little background on them. Then we'll bring Mason back on to talk about the marketing plan and how that's all going.
Sure, I'd love to. So the book has 3 characters. The protagonist is Sophie the squirrel, and she's a patriotic young squirrel, very cute, and she loves freedom and loves America, and she's just turned 18, and she doesn't know who to vote for, so she sits on the fence, as squirrels are known to do.
Okay.
And then she's approached by 2 presidential candidates. Of course, one is a Democrat and one's a Republican, and so we have a donkey character who is a very nasty looking donkey, and he's Dewey the Democrat, and he approaches Sophie and he says things like, "You can't eat your nuts, you must gather more. I'll pay you $3 and take away 4. You sad little squirrel, you don't have a clue. Hee haw, I'm smarter than you." And of course, Sophie, after his spiel, is very scared, and then along comes the Republican nominee for president, and it's a friendly-looking elephant, and her name is Elfie, and Elfie basically tells Sophie that, you know, with freedom and hard work, that she's going to become the best she can be. And so it's a very, very slanted view of politics. That's a real fun way to introduce kids to this world.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've done a great job with it sort of has a sing-song lyric to it, which draws you in and makes it entertaining, because, look, entertainment is what drives culture.
Right.
And ideas that are presented now on in the mainstream entertainment, as well as through, as we've talked about, through the educational establishments, are absolutely an assault on personal liberty and freedom and the principles on which this country was founded. And so I think it's interesting how you have created likable or at least realistic characters that sort of imbue that. And it's funny to watch our presidential election right now. You've got Bernie Sanders, love him or hate him, but he's saying, I'm raising your taxes, I'm taking your money. And then you've got on the other side, the only one out of the 15 that you could even hear is Donald Trump, who is fighting for freedom, law and order. You've got Scott Walker jumped in today, and he says you ought to be able to keep more of your money and not let the public sector unions take all of it. And we see this playing out in real life, but the media often and almost relentlessly, not almost, they relentlessly demonize Republicans.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
I mean, just look at the headlines from today. Scott Walker is called a disgrace by a national union leader. Now, what's he a disgrace for? He balanced the budget, and people get to keep more of their money, and their state's doing great.
Right.
It's crazy. All right, so let me bring Mason on, Mason Sayer, who's doing the marketing, and feel free, either one of you, to jump in on this question. But I want to, how is the book being received?
Well, by conservatives and Republicans, it's being received very, very well. We haven't really run into anyone on the right who doesn't like it. Everyone just falls in love with the book as soon as they see it. As far as the left goes, we have gotten some pretty harsh backlash, as you can imagine. Some people, some Democrats, have compared this project to something the Nazis would have used to brainwash people.
They went straight to the Nazis?
They went straight to the Nazis, straight to the Stalin references.
Oh, well, then it's a massive success, because
they have also said, Tim, they've also said that Sophie our squirrel is racist.
Well,
that's right.
Okay, there's the trifecta. If you are not being called a racist, a Nazi, or a Stalinista, then you are not being effective at threatening the power of the left and the political establishment, which essentially are one. There's a very weak opposition from Republicans in California and many who have actually joined in with the left. But that's amazing. So I take it that this is not now required reading in all the schools.
No, in fact, we have been told by some California public school teachers that there is no way a public school would allow this in their library, because the title alone would be something that is just not considered appropriate for school children.
Even though they use the schools relentlessly to indoctrinate kids and scare their parents into voting Democrat and into voting for higher taxes and everything else. Hey, we're going to have to come up on a break. Can I hold you guys over for another segment?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because I want to hear more about the reaction, and I think our audience will be fascinated, because you've done something that's brave, it's effective, and I'm glad to hear that they are so upset over it, because that means it's revolutionary. The truth is always revolutionary when dictators and tyrants are in control. We'll be right back with Laura Hall, Mason Sayer, Sophie Votes Republican. That's the name of the book. Add.com, and you can buy it. If you've been listening long to the Tim Donnelly Show, you know that we talk constantly about defending freedom and about defending our natural inalienable rights. The Firearms Policy Coalition is a partner of the Tim Donnelly Show. But more than that, they're on the front lines every day in Sacramento and all across the state, in the courts, defending your Second Amendment right. That is a natural right that the government merely acknowledged in the Second Amendment. If you value your freedom, then you need to join Firearms Policy Coalition. Become a member. I'm a member, and I'm happy to support an organization that is doing such an incredible job. Go to joinfpc.org. The Tim Donnelly Show sent you. Or go to timdonnellyshow.com and click on the FPC link to make it easy. But whatever you do, join today. FPC.org. You are tuned in to the Radio Free California Network. We stream live at timdonnellyshow.com. You can connect with us on Facebook and Twitter or email, or you can use the good old-fashioned Alexander Graham Bell invention known as the telephone. It was long before the cell phone. And connect. We are talking right now with Laura Hall, Mason Sayer, who have put out a children's book, and they have been called all kinds of names. They have been compared to Hitler, Stalin, and called the character, this adorable little squirrel, Sophie, has been called a racist. But I read on your website, Laura, that Sophie was modeled after a friend of yours from college.
Well, actually, yeah, a friend of mine from law school. As you can imagine, I couldn't find a conservative friend in all of Berkeley law, but I did have one very good friend who was very patient with my conservative views, and so as a little bit of a joke on her, I named the main character after her.
There you go. Well, that sounds like fun. So tell us. Give us a feel of what happens in the book. You don't have to give it all away, but and then I want to hear a little bit more about where you've been able to get this book in the hands of children and what their reaction has been.
Sure, yeah. So the storyline is basically, Sophie the squirrel is getting to vote for the very first time, and she really wants to make the right decision. And so she sits on the fence and is approached by Dewey the Democrat, who gives a scary, scary spiel, and then Sophie gets scared and is approached by Elfie the elephant, who portrays a much more positive vision for America and what we as citizens should be doing for our country. And so Sophie gets off the fence, and she, of course, votes for Elfie, the Republican candidate. And the exciting ending is that the election is determined by one vote. And so the lesson that we're trying to teach kids is that, not only about conservative values, but also about the critical importance of voting. A lot of times we think, one vote doesn't matter. And, in some ways and in some elections, that might be true to some extent. But at the end of the day, it is just absolutely critically important that we teach kids to get out there and vote.
Well, you are talking to someone who won by one vote per precinct. So everyone...
There you go, right? Every vote counts.
I was elected by one vote in each area. So, yeah, your vote absolutely counts. Okay, but are you making a prediction about the 2016 election here? Are you saying
I will admit that I specifically wrote the book and timed it so that it would be ready for the 2016 election, because I can't imagine this country is going to elect another Democrat. But
it's certainly going to be an interesting process. I will guarantee you that. Now, who did the illustrations, because they're really good?
Yeah, they're phenomenal. Actually, so I'm from Nebraska, and a girl who grew up in the same church as me was just graduating from a small Lutheran college in Nebraska, and she graduated with a graphic arts degree, but this was her first job in illustration, and she did an absolutely phenomenal job. That's the best thing about the book is the illustrations. They're all cut, layered paper, but you would never know it looking at it. It's just phenomenal.
Wow, and I was looking at your promotional materials. You also have some coloring pages, and I'm sure that this book has been a hit with kids. Tell us about that.
Sure, yeah. I'll let Mason talk about that, actually. He's seen it in many kids' hands.
Yes. Well, first of all, we've been talking to a lot of political groups throughout Southern California here where we are, and tons and tons of people are just so excited to buy this and give it to their grandkids or their nieces and their nephews. So these books a lot of these books have gone right into kids' hands, and they're reading them. And from experience, my younger siblings, 9 years old, 10 years old, they love it. They love this book. The rhymes and the pictures, and it's funny, it's fun, it's entertaining, and it's something that they can read on their own, or we can all read together. The whole family can kind of read. But and we've been at certain events to where we have some books on display, and all of a sudden a kid will come up and just grab the book right there and just sit down and start reading it, and they love it. So it's gotten a great response and reaction from the parents and the kids. Everyone seems to just really like it.
Well, that's exciting, because I mean, your goal is not the Republican Party and those who support it, because they're already on board. You're trying to pull in a whole new generation to basically think. You're trying to provoke them to think. You're not telling them how to think, but being on the fence, and then, because everyone is going to have that experience. I remember when I first voted, and it wasn't that long ago. Stop laughing in there in the booth. It was Reagan, and it was I was able to vote for Reagan. Now it was 1984, so it wasn't his first election, but I will admit that I played the song. It was a Fleetwood Mac song, "Landslide," very, very loudly in my college dorm at University of Michigan.
That's great.
It was a lot of fun. And I knew why I was voting for him. I voted for President Ronald Reagan because of how he made me feel about our country. We had a president before that who could only talk about how bad things were, who made things worse. He sent our troops. He sent a special forces to go rescue the hostages. The helicopters crashed in the desert. It was just, everything was a disaster under him. There was this incredible lack of confidence. He had defunded the military. He seemed to not like our country. But Reagan, when he was inaugurated, I was in 8th grade and watched as he started to give his speech. And the clouds parted in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden this ray of sunshine came down right on him as he was being sworn in. True story. And literally within minutes of him being sworn in, all of our hostages were set free.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So, well, I'm just reminiscing, but the Noskinator in here is giving me a dirty look that I've gone way, way off track. But I think that, to tie it all together, that could be our future, that we could have a president that would stand up for the principles that made this country great, which the most powerful one is freedom.
Yeah.
And you talk about that.
That's absolutely, I agree completely with you, and that is the primary focus of the book, is that, we live in a country that was founded on the principle of freedom, and we all have to appreciate that and cherish that and foster that for future generations.
All right, so let's get down to brass tacks here. Where can people get the book, and how much do they have to lay out to get a copy of Sophie Votes Republican?
Well, the best and easiest way to do that is to just go to Amazon, because our book is now up on Amazon. Buy the book on Amazon. It is $17.99, and we would absolutely love it if you bought the book and left a review. Tell us what you think of the book. We'd love to hear people's thoughts. That's how we know what people are thinking. And so that would be the best way, through Amazon, $17.99. just look up Sophie Votes Republican on Amazon. We'll be the first hit up there, and you can just buy it right there.
And we have a link to your website up at timdonnellyshow.com. So if you want to go up there and read about it, find the link, go to Amazon, buy it. We have been talking with Laura Hall and Mason Sayer, who Laura's the author, Mason's the marketing guy. Young Republicans, you guys have an inspiring story. I wish you all the best and hope that you will come back in the future and share with us either future projects or let us know how this one is doing.
Okay, great. Thanks so much for having us on, Tim. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Hey, what an inspiring... I can't call them a couple of kids because then I'd have to start calling you a kid in there. But they're young people with a passion and a vision, and they're doing something positive. I know I don't always bring you the most positive, happy-go-lucky stories. There you have it, and I would definitely encourage you. Go check out their book. Get it for your kids. Get it for your grandkids. Buy it, an extra copy, for one of your liberal friends who might be on the fence. And then call in and tell us what you think. 323-746-TALK. We will take a break, and we'll get right back to it after these messages. Hey, you've heard me talk over and over again about Burro Canyon Shooting Park, which is arguably the greatest place on the face of the earth to exercise your Second Amendment. But it just got better, because if you mention the Tim Donnelly Show, they'll give you free stuff. You get a free hat, free coffee cup, while supplies last if you mention Tim Donnelly Show. So get out there and get shooting. For directions or more information, call Burro Canyon at 626-910-1344.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded, but it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
I'm trying to figure out that music going up and down, but I guess I'm just waiting for my cue here. I'm just trying to do my job here, and does that drive you crazy?
Oh my gosh! Talk about creating a pet peeve that I never knew I had. Yes.
Yeah, I notice, and I do it every time.
I know.
I let the music go all the way down to nothing just to drive the Noskinator crazy. Hey. Talking about the Republican Party, and I certainly don't want to rain on the parade of the encouraging. The young people that wrote a book. That's a positive thing. That's an encouraging thing. That's a positive thing. Okay. Well, but what's the Republican Party doing? The Republican Party they have a candidate who's popular in the polls. What do? They declare war on him. They get out the .50 caliber machine gun and they rake the battlefield with the Marine who has decided to go out there ahead of them because he's making them look bad. Because they're cowards when it comes to standing up and defending the rule of law, because they don't want to be called names. They don't want to be called racist for standing against illegal immigration like Donald Trump. these young kids, these authors, they're not kids. What are they? What's the right word here? Young people, youthful people.
For what? Repeat the question.
Wow. I can't even go there. But they wrote a children's book, and they're being called names. They don't care. You notice that? They've got courage. They've got guts. So here you have some kids that are fresh out of college, and the author Laura is fresh out of law school. They're not afraid to be compared to Hitler and Stalin and called racist for creating characters that basically say the difference between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party is one stands for freedom and the other stands for government control and more government control. I don't completely agree with the dichotomy anymore. Maybe 25, 30, 50 years ago that was true. I think both parties now stand for more government involvement in your life, unfortunately. I think good people, patriots, need to take over the Republican Party, kick out these idiots at the top, the ones who don't want to stand for anything. You know, I spent 3 hours on Sunday with about 25 Democrats, maybe 22, maybe 3 of them were Republicans, but most were Democrats. They're mad at the Democrat Party over the passage of this forced vaccinations bill that we've talked about many times, SB 277. You know I'm leading the referendum on that. But the Republican Party can't understand. They don't seem to have grasped that this issue is not about vaccinations. It's not about medicine and science. It's about control. It's about whether or not the government has the right to make the final decision to inject something into your child's body, or whether you're going to stand up and say, no, I don't think so. Parents have more rights than the state. So you have a fundamental right, a natural right that's under assault by the government, and the Republican Party can't decide whether it's for it or against it. Now, a lot of Republican groups have come out in support of the referendum and against the bill. Some, and a decent number of the tiny super minority of Republicans in California, have come out against SB 277. But the bottom line is that the party had this historic opportunity where you have a tremendous number of Democrats that are really so mad at the Democrat Party that they're leaving. I met a school teacher who left the party, and she has become a Republican, but the 2 out of 3 simply become declined to state. They don't want to join the Republican Party. And shame on them for not going out there and taking a stand, first of all, then going out there and grabbing the bounty, which are all those voters who have no party. Give them a home. Make them feel welcome. Don't argue with them about everything you don't agree on. Find that common ground and start fighting against those who want to use the government as a tool to deprive you of your freedom and your capital. That's your money. And for those of you who are actually thinking about voting for Jeb Bush or Hillary Clinton, the establishment ticket, that's what's in your wallet, your capital, that the government confiscates every opportunity it gets. We have Sabina Durden coming up right at the top of the hour, and you're going to want to hear her story. She met with Donald Trump over the weekend. She was one of the families that was at the press conference. She has a tragic story of the loss of her child, and we will get to that. We'll take your questions. 323-746-TALK is our number, and we will be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. Hey, if you like shooting as much as I do, you've probably been to a lot of ranges. Unless you visited Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you've never seen anything like it. On the way there, you'll find yourself taking pictures as you traverse the majestic Azusa Canyon and wind your way up into the Angeles National Forest. With over 600 acres, including 19 private ranges, there's something for everyone. There's rifle and pistol ranges for beginners, right up to advanced shooters. And there's plenty of spaces to shoot sporting clay. You can make a family day of it, or you can bring a group for team building exercises. Bring a picnic lunch. On the weekends, they provide lunch. And don't worry, they always have ammo in case you forget yours or run out. One thing I can guarantee is that once you visited my friends at Burro Canyon Shooting Park, you'll be hooked and you'll keep coming back. BurroCanyon.com is their website, or call them at 626-910-1344. 626-910-1344. You are tuned to the Tim Donnelly Show. We broadcast on the Radio Free California Network, which streams live at timdonnellyshow.com, and that's where you can connect with us. Send us a Facebook message, a tweet, email, or just use the phone, 323-746-TALK, and make sure you plug that into your speed dial, because you never know when we might talk about something controversial. Yes, I said it. Here on the Tim Donnelly Show. And right now, Donald Trump has been catapulted from pretty much 12th place to first place in less than a month of being in this race, because he's speaking the truth about a very controversial subject. He is calling out the politicians. He's calling out the Mexican government for sending over their poor, they're tired, they're hungry. And he's calling out the American politicians for pandering and handing over all kinds of free stuff paid for by taxpayers. And he's condemning the concept of sanctuary cities that led most recently to the death of 32-year-old Catherine Steinle in San Francisco, but has led to many, many, many other deaths that never made it on the front pages like that. And that brings me to our next guest. Sabina Durden lost her son at the hands of someone who was in the country illegally. And Sabina met with and was one of the 5 families who was at the press conference with Donald Trump. Sabina, welcome to the Tim Donnelly Show.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me.
I am very happy to have you on, and it has been a while since we talked. I think the last time was in my office, if I recollect correctly. And
correctly, yes.
You, along with Don Rosenberg and Jamil and
Brenda Spark, Lupe Moreno.
Yes. But I was going to say Jamil's wife's name, and it's Anita.
Anita, yeah, she wasn't there.
Okay, I wasn't sure. And then he has a sister, Althea. But then there was also Lupe Moreno, Brenda Sparks, Robin Vidston. So all of you have one thing in common, and it's not that you're racist.
That's absolutely right.
But you've been called that, I'm sure, many times for speaking out.
Oh, plenty.
But unfortunately...
Yeah, and that was, yeah.
Unfortunately, what you have in common is that you have all tragically lost a loved one, in your case, your son, to someone who had come into the country illegally who wasn't supposed to be here. And that's got to make it doubly painful.
It does. And it was my only child. Dominic was only 30 years old and in the prime of his life. And I believe he would still be here with me if this guy that came from Guatemala illegally, and I just found out Saturday that he has been deported previously. So he's here for at least 8 years committing felony, armed robbery, 2 DUIs, on probation for the first DUI, gets another DUI 4 weeks before my son was killed, and is on probation again. I don't think any one of us would get that kind of treatment. We would be locked up.
Well, we just heard that in Los Angeles, they are stamping out a massive crime that is Uber drivers who pick up people on the side of the road without the proper documentation. So they have sting operations underway. They've arrested 3 drivers who picked up people. I still don't get what the crime is. I guess for not having the proper license to operate a cab in Los Angeles or whatever. So they haven't bribed the government. But they're serious about that kind of stuff, and they crack down. They put resources. But it has become politically really the third rail among those in power. They've convinced themselves that the people will not support them if they actually enforce the law. But Donald Trump's story sort of puts the lie to that. And I was reading in the on CNN your reaction when you heard that Donald Trump was running for office. You said, when I heard Mr. Trump, I started screaming. I started hooting and hollering. Finally, somebody has the guts to say what millions are thinking but afraid to say.
Yes. That's exactly it. Jamil and Don and Brenda and all of us, we have been talking about this. Robin Winston, she has been with the Remembrance Project and Maria Espinosa. They have been fighting relentlessly to get this heard. And people like to chuck it away and, it's an isolated incident until it gets a little closer to their family. And, I just this morning I told somebody, I said, well, people were not outraged about it before Trump spoke out because they weren't affected. Well, now that they have to go to the DMV and stand in lines for hours and can't get an appointment because of illegal aliens who are getting their license, well, now it hits home a little closer. They're lucky they haven't lost anybody in their family, but it's inconveniencing them.
Well, I think that people have been outraged for a long time, but nobody's talking about it at the level that it used to get. I mean, back when Jamil Shah's son died, when the triple murder occurred to the Bologna family in San Francisco. I was out of I had led the Minutemen. I was out of the Minutemen. I was back. Literally, I was in San Francisco trying to start a new business. Shortly after that, when that happened, and they hadn't even identified the killer as an illegal at the time, and I knew it was immediately when I read the story. But and of course, when I ran for office, I brought the Arizona law, AB 1070, to California. Everybody thinks of it as the law where you're asked for your papers. No, it is the law that targets sanctuary cities. It says if you want to run a sanctuary city as a city or a municipality, fine, go ahead. But we now have the right to sue you if one of our loved ones is killed or we are harmed in any way by your flouting the federal law.
Absolutely.
And of course, we know politicians don't want to be held accountable for their actions. So that bill created a great deal of consternation, largely within the Republican Party. But this is something that we've been fighting here in the trenches for a long time. But Donald Trump made it a national issue. He put it on the front pages. What was it like being at that press conference with him?
I'm still trying to find the right words. First of all, he had us in a separate room. We gathered, and there was no media. There was no bodyguard. There was nobody but him and us. And when he walked in, it's such a presence. He sat down. Before he sat down, he hugged all of us. He greeted us, and you could tell while each one of us was sharing our stories, he was really concerned. He is a no-nonsense kind of man, and I like that. And he didn't just come in as a little snowball. He came in as an avalanche. He didn't build up. He just hit it. And we are all so grateful. So we got to share. We laughed. We cried. We talked. And he didn't cut any one of us off. He just gave everybody time to share. And then he said, well, you guys ready to tell the media about it? Because a lot of times we've been shunned. People
right. Yeah, they won't cover it. They won't cover it. But somehow he has struck a nerve and he's launched from last to first in the polls in no time at all, because he's speaking the truth, and it's an uncomfortable truth. It's a truth people don't want to face, and the bottom line is that when I saw him standing with you guys, people that I have known, people I have fought beside. I've known Robin since all the way back when I met her at the border on April 6th. Of 2005. So that's 10 years that I've known her. She's been out there relentless fighting.
Yes.
And so this is such an important issue that gets short shrift by the other Republican candidates. So regardless of what happens to Donald Trump's campaign, you can be grateful that he has now brought this and forced the other candidates. Have any of the other candidates reached out to you?
Let me think about that for a second. No.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
No.
That's shocking.
I wrote a letter to the president, and it was an open letter, and I also sent him one, and I haven't heard any response of it. I'm not really expecting it, but it would be nice, especially now.
Wow.
But yesterday was a rough day, Tim. Yesterday was the third year. Dominic got killed yesterday 3 years ago. And I call it the Angelversary. So every year on July 12th, my fiancé Anthony and I, we hold the open house. We cook, we set up the whole place, and Dominic's friends, co-workers, police, fire, SWAT, whoever knew.
Hey, you didn't tell me about the free food. I would have been there.
That's why I figured I might as well not tell you, because we might not have food left over. So next time you just have to come now.
All right, now we know.
But we had, Tim, over 100 people coming through this house.
Oh, that's awesome.
The kids in the pool. I put up a tent with Legos that Dominic used to play with, and everybody was eating, laughing, sharing stories, crying. We had 2 big fire trucks at the stations that Dominic used to volunteer, 48 and 6. They pulled up with their fire trucks. There was no more space in the street. It was such a force of love, such a show of love. And I held at least 6 grown men that are used to tragedy, cops and SWAT members, crying. This is 3 years later.
Wow. So Sabina, let me put you on hold, because we're gonna take some calls right when we get back. We've got Sabina Durden, lost her son 3 years ago yesterday. Her son Dominic met with presidential candidate Donald Trump, and we will take your calls at 323-746-TALK right after this.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded. But it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
Whether you're an experienced shooter or just buying your first gun, Turner's Outdoorsman has everything you need, along with a knowledgeable and friendly staff to help you find that perfect gear for your next adventure. Turner's now has 18 locations across Southern California, including a Victorville location right on Bear Valley Road. Be sure to check out the new Archery Pro shops in the Victorville, Chino Hills, and Pasadena locations. If you're not sure what you're looking for, you can browse and shop their selection at Turners.com. Be sure to check out their weekly specials and sign up to get them delivered directly to your inbox. Turners is where I turn for all my firearms and ammo needs. Remember to tell them Tim Donnelly sent you, and you'll get an additional discount. We're talking with Sabina Durden, who 3 years ago yesterday tragically lost her son Dominic to an illegal alien who came here from Guatemala, who was more than likely driving without a license. And I said we'd take your calls. We've got Paul from, looks like somewhere in Northern California. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. You are on with Sabina.
Yes. Sabina, hi.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Oh, good. Hey, I just wanted to say that I've been fighting against illegal immigration and amnesty for years, and I've actually been following the Jamil Shah family for a few years now, and I recently just met Sabina. I recently met her on Facebook. And I can tell you that being in this fight for so long, we're always looking for that one, that one article or that one issue that is going to save us. And so anyway, when I woke up, I think it was on the 4th of July when that woman was murdered in San Francisco, and I saw that article, it just hit me that the tide is turning. I just thought, man, this is really going to put people over the edge. And,
what you're referring to is the tragic death, the completely unnecessary and 100% preventable death of Catherine Steinel in San Francisco, who was killed at Pier 14, broad daylight, by a guy who wasn't supposed to be in the country, 7-time felon, Francisco Sanchez, who also had been deported 5 times. Mm-hmm. So now, Sabina, what's the story with your situation? Tell us a brief synopsis of what happened in 3 years ago yesterday.
3 years ago, yes. 3 years ago, Dominic was on his way to Riverside Sheriff's Department Dispatch Center. It's the 911 call center. And he was riding his motorcycle down the street about 2 miles from the house. He had 2 guys in a car behind him, witnesses saying he wasn't speeding. He was just riding his bike normally. He comes to right above Home Depot, there's a side street, and a guy turned in front of him, coming towards him, turned in front of him into that street, hit him so hard that he was projected into the wall and died instantly. He broke his neck.
Oh.
Yeah, the coroner told me he didn't suffer, and that was important to me. Anyways, the guy tried to run away, but the 2 guys in the cars, one of them, two Marines, one of them prevented him from running away, and the other one I talked to, he went over and sat with Dominic and talked to him, and I said, talk to him? I thought he was dead. He said, no, he was. I just still talked with him. Police showed up. The first responder knew Dominic and recognized the bike.
Wow.
He went into complete shock, couldn't move. His sergeant showed up, asked him to just stand with the killer of my son, who was sitting there bored to death and no remorse. The next policeman comes up on a motorcycle, and it was Dominic's best friend, who he wanted to become a motorcycle cop with. Then the fire department shows up, and I talked to that gentleman yesterday. He went over and he realized it was Dominic, and he didn't want to believe it. And he pulled out the wallet, and he saw Dominic's ID, and he lost it. So you have all these men there with my dead son, crying in shock, can't move. Thank God they were smart enough to call Highway Patrol to take over the case. They covered my son in American flag. And in the meantime, June, which is an alias, he has more than one name, was sitting there again bored. They ran his records and somehow found out that he's been deported before. And they placed him under arrest. They tested his blood for alcohol. He was right under the legal level, so it was not a drunk driving incident. He was arrested and was put in ice hold where he bailed out for $10,000 cash.
They let him out of an ice hold?
Yes. We didn't know it was even possible. A federal judge allowed him to bail out for $10,000 cash.
You've got to be kidding.
No, and you wonder where does he come up with $10,000? He's a day laborer, so supposedly. So he was bailed out, but he was so arrogant of all the crimes he committed before that he didn't even bother to worry that, well, maybe I should run, because we thought he would be a flight risk.
Wow.
He showed up to court where the judge gave him a deal before he even read our letters to him, heard our victim impact statements, before he looked through the facts. He could have given this guy 365 days for a misdemeanor. That is without gross negligence.
Wow. Sabina,
I don't get that wording.
Can I keep you over another break?
Oh, absolutely. You can keep me as long as you like.
All right. We will be right back with Sabina's story right after these breaks.
Don't you think it's about time you treat yourself or someone you love to something very special? Well, Ozell Jewelers, the finest jewelry store in the high desert, is known throughout the high desert for having the largest variety of fine-looking jewelry and gifts for every special occasion. Ozell custom designs and manufactures their own jewelry, so you'll be able to find exclusive, one-of-a-kind, stunning styles you won't find anywhere else in Southern California. If you're looking for fine jewelry at unbeatable prices, Ozell Jewelers is the place to go. Show appreciation to that special person in your life with something special to cherish forever. Ozell Jewelers, voted best jewelers in the high desert by the Daily Press regularly for years. Ozell Jewelers has been putting smiles on high desert faces for over 30 years. Ozell Jewelers in Rancho Cucamonga, Palm Desert, and Amargosa Road by Red Lobster in Victorville. Ozell Jewelers.
This portion of the Tim Donnelly Show is sponsored by CAPS. That's Californians for Population Stabilization. If you're concerned about sanctuary cities and crime, and if you're listening to this show, you probably are, you need to support this organization. They work every day to make our community safer by upholding the rule of law and exposing the truth about how unchecked illegal immigration affects the average Californian. Go to capsweb.org. That's CAPS web.org and become a member today. We're talking with Sabina Durden, whose son Dominic was tragically killed 3 years ago yesterday. And Sabina, you were just getting, it was a very emotional point at which we had to stop. Your son is there. He was killed literally instantly as this individual slammed him into the wall. He was projected off his motorcycle. And there were two individuals, two Marines, who kept the suspect from fleeing. And then as emergency personnel turned up, almost every one of them was a close friend of his or an acquaintance of his, with the was it the PD that he was in or serving with, or the sheriffs?
Well, he served in the 911 dispatch center for Riverside Sheriff's Department, but he also volunteered with our local fire stations. And so all these guys knew him because they've been riding with him and hanging out with him.
Wow! And the judge let the guy go. Literally, gave him
ice hold, right?
Let him off on an ice hold, but also negotiated a sentence. You were starting to say what his sentence was. That's what I wanted to get to. What?
Right.
What was the sentence?
So he came back for the hearing and talked to the judge. He was telling the judge how good-looking he was and what a great judge he was, and he's so proud to be here. And we were trying to look around, trying to figure out if this was a prank or something.
What?
The judge ate all of this up and then told him that he made a deal with him, and if he would plead guilty to a misdemeanor charge, he would give him 9 months and 5 years probation. And since he already said a few days in jail, he actually served 35 days in a cell in Riverside for killing my boy.
Oh, my gosh.
And after that, after the time was over, ICE picked him up again. And this time, I was not going to have any federal judge or anybody else let this guy go. So I became... I have a nickname, and it's called German Tank. So the German Tank became active along with my fiancé and a lot of Dominic's friends and co-workers. And we wrote letters to the detention center for illegal criminals in Adelanto, right up there in your area.
Sure.
Yeah, and he was up there, and we befriended an ICE agent, and... because I called around. I wanted to know where they were holding this guy and what was happening to him. So we found out he was up there. We went there every week. We sat for hours. We wrote letters to the judge. The attorney that worked the case for us to get soon deported, she was very kind, Stephanie, and her last name escaped me right now. He was trying to get amnesty and every sob story he could bring for us to leave him here. And because of the combined effort and my loud mouth and me not backing up, it took us 1.5 years to get him deported on March 15th last year. And I'm pretty sure he's right back where he started because he has family in Riverside, which is a sanctuary city.
See, that brings it full circle because that's what we've been talking about is why do we have cities in California that are sanctuaries for not only criminals, but people who are illegal alien criminals, people who have come into this country illegally and then committed additional crimes. Why in the world do we have sanctuaries for them and not for you and me as law-abiding Americans?
I couldn't go anywhere. I want sanctuary. I would like to go to a sanctuary, anything.
Which
relief from this stress.
Where are the sanctuary cities for people like me, Peckerwoods who live up in the hill with too many guns?
Yeah.
What if I accidentally find myself on the other side of the... Oh, yeah, that happened to me. There was no sanctuary for me at the airport when I accidentally carried my gun into TSA. They threw the book at me. They did it. They wanted to put me in jail. There were people that wanted to make a big deal out of it.
Well, of course.
Why isn't there a sanctuary for law-abiding, patriotic Americans who have made this country great?
You know what kills me also, Tim, is the fact that now people can't call me racist because my son was half black. And then
that's not going to stop them, I'm sure.
They tried, but I look at him and say, okay, what else you got? Because that's not working on me.
Yeah, you sound like Trump now. You sound like Donald Trump.
Well, that's why we got along great, and I got a lot of hugs from that man. He called me the firecracker, and it wasn't just because of the red dress.
I bet he liked you.
But what I get so angry at is that I am an immigrant. I married Dominic's dad. It was, 30-some years ago. We're divorced now since 15 years. And even though Dominic's dad was in the military in Germany, I had to apply for a legal alien card. So I was propped and prodded and tested, blood tested, so I have no diseases. I had to fill out paperwork, just a whole bunch of everything to prove that I'm okay to come into the United States.
You went through the immigration process so that we could determine that you were not a threat medically. And by the way, just to point out, we just passed a law in California to force every single American citizen to be vaccinated or their kids can't go to school.
Isn't that sweet?
But the measles was brought in by a foreigner, according to the CDC. They don't know if it was a legal or illegal immigrant, but it was really somebody. Yeah, which is crazy. But when you went through the process, you had a medical check. You had a background check to see if you were a criminal.
Yes.
I'm sure they also checked to see if you had money and a sponsor.
Exactly.
So you don't become a burden, right?
Exactly. I still remember it clearly. I had to sign a paperwork that stated I could not ever collect Social Security or welfare or get any money from the government until I become a citizen. Not that I planned on doing that. So in 93, I earned my citizenship, and I remember being in the convention center in L.A., and back then the mayor was saying, you guys are really special because you chose to become an American. You weren't born into it. You chose to, and I was so proud. And now when I look around, not only was my only child taken, because my government doesn't really care about any of us, that's how I feel right now, but everybody that comes here illegally, and I'm talking about whether you're from Germany illegally, from Canada illegally, I don't care where you come from illegally. Your hands are wide open and you get back taxes, you get welfare, you get food stamps, your kids go to school free, everything is handed out free. So where's the incentive of being so proud to become an American, to assimilate?
Wow, you make a good point. I can't argue with you.
Yeah, and that makes me so angry. Now, the saddest part is, since I've been going through this, Dominic's friends ranged from every culture, from every race, from every age and gender. I have heard so many, especially Hispanics, since Trump made that statement, and he talks and says it like he feels. You know, I might word it different, he doesn't, but that's okay. But I hear so many tell me that they will 200% support Trump because they are tired that their parents and them had to do it the legal and right way, and others just come in, get in front of the line, and take everything.
Well, that was actually confirmed on our show last week when Robert from Hemet called in. He's Hispanic, and he said, I don't agree with Trump on sort of the way he said it, but he said, I'm embarrassed that so many people who are of my race are out there driving drunk, committing crimes, doing things, and making the rest of us look bad when we all did it the right way, in the legal way. And then I asked him at the very end, I said, hey, Robert, I just curious. You don't have to say if you don't want to, but who are you supporting for president?
Yeah.
And he said Donald Trump.
Yep.
And it was...
I call it? And at least he said it out loud, but I've heard a lot of people, and they write me now, they email, and I'm still starting to get used to the Twitter thing. I have no clue, but I get there. But I have people tell me they will vote that way, but they cannot let their families know because they will have arguments at home.
Well, and there's nothing you can do about that. But he has certainly opened an important conversation. Can you stay with us one more segment?
You got it.
Thank you.
You will.
We're talking with Sabina Durden. This portion of the show is sponsored by CAPS, as Californians for Population Stabilization. Go to capsweb.org, that's CAPS web.org, and become a member today.
Defending the fundamental freedom of parents to make informed decisions for their own children is a basic human right that should never be discarded. But it was. California's SB 277 denies children access to education and takes away a parent's right to choose. You don't have to be a parent to help, and only you can make a difference. Let's veto SB 277. Save the freedom of a parent's right to choose. To volunteer or donate, go to SB277referendum.com. SB277referendum.com. Do it now.
Hey, this portion of the Tim Donnelly Show has been sponsored by CAPS. That's the Californians for Population Stabilization. If you're concerned about sanctuary cities and crime, and you should be, you need to support an organization that actually ran a commercial talking about this. It was broadcast on mainstream television years ago. They're an organization that works every day to make our communities safer by upholding the rule of law and exposing the truth about how unchecked illegal immigration affects the average Californian. Go to capsweb.org. That's capsweb.org and become a member today. We have with us on the line Sabina Durden, whose son was tragically cut down in the prime of his life 3 years ago yesterday. And Sabina, we've got a caller. Gary wants to ask you a question.
Sure. Yes, hi. How are you doing? I have laryngitis, so you have to forgive me. But
no amnesty anyway. For you, Gary. No amnesty.
Oh, geez. No, I just want Sabina to know that she has my heart and prayers. You know, because losing a child is unbearable, really.
Yes, it is.
You know, and
thank you so much.
You're very welcome. We have to do something about this illegal immigration. This has got to be dealt with. We just can't keep on doing this. Our country is in a downfall right now just because of this. So,
well, Gary,
I support legal. Pardon me.
You're right, and there is some good news. There is an effort at the federal level to put some teeth into the sanctuary city laws, which are illegal on a federal level, and to deny them that federal funding that these politicians are addicted to. So that may change the landscape of California, where right now there are something like 276 sanctuary cities. And they let
That's ridiculous.
8,145 illegal offenders free in just the past 8 months.
That's ridiculous. I don't even have words for that. I might have to cut it off early. My voice is getting worse here, Tim. But I just want Sabina to know that our hearts and prayers are with her and stuff. So,
Gary, I will speak for you.
Thank you so much. Yes.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your call. And Sabina, obviously, I know you've had an outpouring of support. You had over 100 people through your house yesterday, and it's time for us to get past attending funerals and mourning the dead, and it's time for us to fight our government, which I think is a big part of the appeal of Donald Trump. Look, you can disagree with the way he said it, but you cannot disagree with the facts of what he said, which is that Mexico has been gaming the system. They're sending over people who basically need help. They either need a job, they need a better life, and among those who are coming here literally just for financial survival, you have people who are cold-blooded criminals. You have people who are rapists. You have people who are a whole lot of things. But you also have people who just really don't care. They weren't required to obey the law, so what do they care?
There are no consequences. It's like a child. You let a child do everything it wants, and, well, you're going to have a tyrant on your hands without any boundaries. But it's not just, and I've heard this a lot, people talk about, criminal illegals. I can't call them immigrants. I'm sorry, I'm an immigrant.
Good point.
For me, it's still illegal alien.
Well, that's illegal alien. Illegal alien is the proper term.
Well, they're trying to do away with that as well now, but that's okay. But it's not just the criminal aspect, and I understand there are many people that flee, whatever it is they're trying to flee, and they come over here and they want to make a good living and want to support their family. I'm all for that, and I always say, well, do it the legal way, no matter how long it takes. But if they only concentrate on criminal illegals, they're missing a whole portion of. You probably noticed a big rise in hit and runs.
Sure.
So a young lady wrote to me in a tearful letter that she was hit head-on by an illegal alien who never had an arrest record. He was under the radar.
All right.
Which didn't change the fact.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
One year from now, let's say Donald Trump is the president. Let's say he wins in November. What would you want him to do? What is the most important thing he can do to honor the legacy of all of those who have been killed by those who came into this country illegally?
And I think we all agree on that. All the parents, the victims, build the wall, stop the flood coming in. We can start right there. We have National Guards. We have people that are ready to do that kind of job.
So you want them
close it down, close the wall, and stop that, and then start cleaning up
and enforce the law.
Exactly, because we have it on the books, we just don't enforce it.
All right. Well, we're going to send your message to Donald Trump, and hopefully the conversation continues. We are unfortunately out of time here, Sabina. Thank you, Sabina Durden. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Kim. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Likewise, always. God bless you and Godspeed.
Thank you.
Hey, this portion of the Tim Donnelly Show was sponsored by CAPS. That's Californians for Population Stabilization. They're fighting for you. They've got your back. They're exposing the truth about how unchecked illegal immigration affects the average Californian. Go to capsweb.org, capsweb.org, and become a member today. And keep listening to the Tim Donnelly Show. We're here every day, 3 to 6 p.m. God bless you. And Godspeed. Tim Donnelly Show out.